On Sunday night, do you get that feeling of dread, that pit in your stomach, and you're like, I just can't believe that the week is starting again, and I don't want to go back there. Please don't make me go back there. Well, I think all of us have probably been there at some time in our life, and we just are in a job that is making us feel completely drained, exhausted, unappreciated, bored, or maybe just and you don't know why. Well, if that's you, then we need to talk. This video is for you. We're going to talk about how to decide whether it's your job, the current position that you're in right now, that's making you feel that way, as opposed to just working in medicine in general. Because medicine is hard and the system is, let's face it, really screwed up. But even within that crazy system, there are still jobs that are really good, offices that function well, where providers feel supported and appreciated. And then there's offices where that doesn't happen. We're going to go through several different points in this video. The first one is going to be talking about red flags that can help you identify whether you're in a toxic workplace or not. It seems like it might be obvious to tell, but it's not always. It's kind of like being in an abusive relationship, right? This is just your everyday. You get used to what's happening and you kind of get a little numb to it. And then we're going to talk about the fact that sometimes there's nothing wrong with the job, it just doesn't fit your needs anymore. And so we're going to talk about ways to look at that and see what might have changed in your life that makes this job not a fit anymore. And then lastly, we're going to talk about boredom and burnout. They both can leave you feeling really drained and have some very similar symptoms, but they're two different things with different causes and different ways to fix them. So we're going to help you identify if you've got any of those things going on. Now, if you've never been on this channel before, hi, welcome. My name is Michelle. I am a practicing PA, and this is my channel, The Medicine Couch. On this channel, my goal is to help PAs and NPs really kind of craft a career that they love. Normally, I'm bringing you interviews with other PAs and NPs, showing you what they do and helping you identify things that might interest you. But I'm starting a new series because I think that this would be helpful for people, sharing the knowledge that I've gained over the past 3 years of interviewing hundreds of PAs and NPs. So the series is going to start with this video about helping you decide whether you need to make a change or not. And then the rest of the videos are going to be about how you make that change, how you identify what it is that you want, and how you can shape your job to be exactly what you want it to be. So if that sounds good to you and you're interested in this series, then I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button, but also hit that notification bell. That way YouTube will notify you when my videos come out so you don't miss any of them in this series. And of course, if you think this information is helpful and you think of colleagues that might like it, please share the video with them. Okay, so let's start looking at the red flags and things that let you know that this is a toxic environment that you're in and that maybe you'd be better off leaving and finding another job. But before we talk about those red flags, I gotta say, no job is perfect. But as we go through these and you think about your job, it really becomes problematic and moving into the toxic workplace kind of category if there are several of these red flags that are popping up and that you can identify, and especially if they're the flags that are most important to you and bother you the most. Okay, so let's look at some of these. Let's start with lack of support. Do you have a supervising physician that just kind of ghosts you, that you have a hard time getting in touch with, or even if you are able to talk with them, they're kind of dismissive or don't give you lots of information? Or do you work in an office where the administrator, the office manager, just totally throws you under the bus all the time, or doesn't support you, doesn't help if you're having problems with your schedule, doesn't recognize that there is a breaking point that you're reaching, and then they keep just telling you that, well, it's expected and you have to see this many patients or you have to do this or that, and too bad if you're struggling? Or do you just kind of sometimes feel like, even though you're surrounded by staff or providers, that you're almost like on an island all by yourself, that there's not really that feeling that anyone is there to support or help each other? Then there are some practices that you may feel that things are a little unethical or you don't like the practices that are happening, or you don't feel like that you can give great patient care with the amount of patients that they're making you see. They're sometimes double or triple booking you and they never check with you to see if you're able to take an add-on patient. Are there a few more opiates and controlled substances being prescribed than maybe you feel comfortable with? Are there some kind of dodgy billing practices going on? Like, do you feel like they're overbilling or billing incident to when it's not appropriate? Anything like that would probably be a red flag. Then there's just straight up disrespect and bullying. And this can come from supervising physicians, your provider colleagues, or from the staff. It takes the form of things like gaslighting. I worked at a position where the medical director would tell us they wanted some forms and paperwork done a certain way. And then when you would do it that way, you'd get called in her office and she would make you feel like an idiot that you were doing things totally wrong, even though you were doing it exactly how she said. And this happened with many of the providers. It wasn't just me or isolated incidents. It happened all the time. So it was a huge gaslighting situation and it really made you feel terrible and unsure of yourself. Then there's physicians that like to belittle PAs and NPs, make snide remarks about our profession or little cutting remarks and implying that we don't know what we're doing because we're just PAs or NPs. And sometimes you have to be really careful because if that's the attitude running around there, the staff often says things to patients that may reinforce that attitude and undermine you as a provider. Then sometimes you have physicians that feel the need to constantly criticize you, to pick apart everything you are doing and putting it down, even if it's a perfectly legitimate treatment plan or whatever you're doing is fine. We know in medicine there's different ways that things can be approached. So if you're not following their approach, you might be constantly criticized. Now, criticism is fine and correction of mistakes should be happening, but it should be done in a professional manner, not in front of other staff or in front of patients. It shouldn't be done in a way that puts you down. It should be done in an educational way. So if your work is being pulled apart, or if everything seems to be fine and then out of the blue you get blindsided with being told that you're never doing anything right and that your charts are all wrong, things like that, that's a red flag. And you know what? It doesn't always just happen from other providers. A lot of times it can happen from the staff. It's amazing sometimes how disrespectful staff can be. They wouldn't do it to the MD, but they'll be that disrespectful to a PA or an NP because they think they can get away with it. I've had MAs roll their eyes at me when I ask them to do something. Worked with MAs that kind of just flat out don't do what you ask them to do, ignore your repeated requests for them to handle something in a certain way, or you just feel like that there's a lot of gossiping and talking and snickering about you amongst the staff. Those are all bad signs. Lack of professional growth. That may not register as a red flag right away, but are you in a position where they don't encourage you to go to conferences, or they only let the doctors go and don't give PAs and NPs any time off to go to conferences, don't encourage you to learn and pick up new skills, kind of keep you working well beneath the top of your license, maybe treat you like a glorified scribe? And finally, are they like resistant to any kind of new ideas, any ways that you feel could improve the practice? Another red flag would be high turnover. Are the providers just kind of on a revolving door there? Or maybe even the staff? And sometimes it's even worse when the staff is on that revolving door because the people who had been there and learned how things function, have left. And then everyone's there trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. Then there's poor communication and lack of transparency in things. Are you hearing things in the practice through rumor mills instead of just having things kind of frankly addressed and talked about? Or are they making changes that drastically affect you and they've never asked for your input or anyone else's on the staff? or they just implement these changes without any explanations or really much help and guidance on how to make these changes. How about like ignoring your boundaries and making it very difficult for you to have work-life balance? These would be things like pressuring you to see more and more patients, causing you to work later in the day to get your charting done or to do your charting at home, or pressuring you to pick up weekend shifts or work call when none of that was discussed when you were hired or different from what you had talked about and agreed upon? Or do they make it near impossible for you to take any of your PTO, or if they do let you take PTO, make you feel terrible about it? Or what if you have to call in sick one day for either yourself or like your child? Is it an endless guilt trip? Are they always trying to get you to come into work no matter what is going on in your life? That's not a supportive community and a place that I would want to work in. And lastly, are you experiencing like physical and mental symptoms from this job? Have you noticed that since you've been working here, you have become much more anxious and nervous, more short-tempered, and kind of losing it with your friends and family when that's not your normal personality? Is your sleep being interrupted because you're so stressed out? Have you developed acid reflux? Are you having palpitations? These kinds of things can come from stress of a poor work environment. Now, those aren't all the red flags by any means. They're just some of the more common ones that are seen. The next would be that kind of job mismatch. Something is off, but you're not really sure what it is. And the most obvious one is maybe you got hired into a job and it just turned out to be a bit different than you expected. Maybe it's a new specialty that you don't like quite as much as you thought you would, or something about the practice just isn't really what you anticipated. So that happens and really may not be anyone's fault. It just didn't end up being right for you. But then there's other situations where you're in a job that you actually kind of like. You like the people, you like the office, things are fine, but there's something that doesn't match your life anymore. So it could be that when you got the job, you were single and you're working 14-hour days in OR, or you have to take call through the night or whatever it is, and it matched your lifestyle then. But maybe now you're married and there's a partner who doesn't like your schedule, or you have kids now and that's just not working anymore. Or whatever it is, if that schedule is not working for you, even if you like the job, sometimes it just creates way more stress and hassles than it may be worth. Maybe it's financial challenges. Maybe you need to make significantly more than you're making now, and you know it's not going to happen at that job, even with your best negotiating skills, so you're looking to make a change. Or maybe you're financially stable now and you're later in your career and you can afford to drop back to part-time or just try a specialty that interests you that may not pay as much as you're making right now. Then there's health changes, maybe you got a bad knee, you can't walk around the hospital like you used to, or a bad back and you can't stand in the OR all day. Or maybe it's the opposite. You want to get more fit and healthy and you realize that the job you have, you just sit all day long and it's not meshing with what you want for your life right now. And then there's personal growth. As people, we don't stay the same. The things that we're interested in and the things we like, and even sometimes our values and what we want in life just changes as we get older and grow. Maybe what you're doing right now isn't aligned with what you want to be doing. Maybe you want more challenge or less challenge in your job. Maybe you want to get in a job where you can learn some different or new skills. All of those things can be problems that maybe aren't that obvious, but are leading to you having this underlying dissatisfaction with where you're at right now. Sometimes we resist making the changes we need to because it just seems like a lot of work. But you may not realize how much tension and stress these mismatches can actually be creating in your life. And you may be underestimating the excitement and the fulfillment you can get with making a change. And then that last bucket that we talked about, are you bored or are you burnt out? Is that what's contributing to your feelings where you're not wanting to go to work? And like I said, they both can have some of the same symptoms. For instance, if you're in a job that is just kind of actually boring, you can feel exhausted. It can leave you feeling just kind of detached from things because you just have nothing that's sparking your interest. And unfortunately, that feeling of detachment can kind of carry over into the rest of your life. With boredom, you also could just feel just generally unchallenged or underutilized, and that's bothering you. you might kind of realize that you're just working on autopilot, that you don't really care one way or the other about things that are happening at work. Nothing's exciting to you. You don't really feel very motivated or engaged in things. One way that can carry over into your personal life is that if you get used to boredom and you get used to not having anything exciting or new or challenging going on, then maybe in your personal life, you tend to just sit at home and watch TV or lay around instead of getting out and exploring and doing something new and exciting. It's like inertia. You're used to being in one state all day long, and then when you get home, you just stay in that state. A burnout shares some of the similar symptoms. I mean, you're totally exhausted and you often detach from life and kind of check out, but for different reasons. So in burnout, you have this emotional stress that's going on and it just drains you completely. Like there's nothing left there, no reserves. And oddly enough, when you're burnt out, you start feeling less competent and less effective. Even if you've been really good at your job and on top of things, when you get burned out, your mind just isn't firing on all cylinders, right? And it's easy to forget stuff. You may be wondering, like, why can't I keep up with the workload? I used to be able to do this. When you're burned out, you tend to become cynical, like very cynical, even more than people might normally be in medicine. And that cynicism and that negativity, again, carries over into your personal life. And you're realizing that you're just kind of hating everything right now. Really hard to see the upside of anything. And then, of course, like we talked about earlier, you could be experiencing those physical changes, like developing hypertension or heart palpitations or acid reflux, or just, can't sleep for anything, no matter what you've tried. These all can be symptoms of burnout. And that's important to recognize because they both can be fixed to some extent. Boredom is probably easier to fix and usually requires you to be a little bit more creative, whereas burnout is harder to fix, especially if you're staying in the same position. So it would really be helpful if you start thinking about these different buckets. Red flags in your workplace, any mismatch that may be going on, and whether you have some boredom or burnout going on. And while it's great to reflect in quiet times at home, it's also very helpful to do this at your workplace. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but try to be a little bit more aware of situations that are happening in the office and interactions between different members of the staff, interactions you have with staff and with other providers. And write things down. It doesn't have to be much, maybe just 2 sentences, like supervising physician criticized me in front of staff, or heard MA tell the patient, well, she's just a PA. Something like that. Just write it down. You don't have to give it a whole lot of thought right then. And you can also write down good things that you notice. If you're being more aware and you realize, hey, this MA is really on the ball. They got this done really quickly. They were very efficient. Or I heard this doctor praising me to another staff member or to a patient. Anything like that, just jot it down. So let me show you why it's so helpful to write it down. Say you did this for a period of a couple of weeks and you've got like a page of notes, little scenarios that you jotted down, and you read through those. I bet you would be surprised, and I bet you would see patterns emerging. And sometimes they may be very worrisome patterns. It's funny how we can minimize stuff in our minds, suppress them and don't think about them, or we gloss over them, or we don't give them the weight that they deserve. But when you see it all written down, you may be like, damn, I can't believe that this is where I work and that I let people talk to me this way. Or hopefully, maybe you look at it and you're like, this is a pretty supportive environment. There's a lot of things that are right about where I work, but I just need to fix some things. So either way, whatever the outcome is, I think this exercise will be very helpful for you. And I challenge you to do it just for a couple of weeks. Be observant, be diligent about writing down what you're seeing. And also, when you do this analysis, try to listen to your gut. I think a lot of times we know deep down if some place is bad for us or if it's, we get good feelings about it, but we don't listen to that intuition enough. So I would encourage you to tap into that as well. So what happens once you've done all that? You've done the analysis, you've listened to your gut, you've made your list, and you realize that you need to go, that this is not a good environment for you to be in. Well, I know it may be scary, but that's good news if you've made that decision and you realize that you need to leave. If you're nervous that you might jump from one bad environment into another, if you're not sure how you really figure out what it is that you would want or that would make you fulfilled, or how to check out an office or vet a position to make sure it's what you want, how to present yourself and your resume, how to find these jobs, how to be successful and do successful onboarding once you land the job. All these kinds of things I'm going to cover in this series. Like I said, it's going to be like 15 or 16 videos long. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you know when those videos come out. Now, if your decision is to stay in your position, well, that's great. Many of these videos can still help you. And in fact, the next video that's going to be coming out in the series is going to be talking about how to improve things in the office that you're in. Improve, communication, how to set boundaries, how to better yourself through professional development and become more competent in your skills, and also how to advocate for change. As soon as I have that video ready, I will put it right here for you. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.